So what if the next 10 years for Gen X end up being the most expensive and volatile decade of our lives? Because that's looking like a reality. And if you think working longer is your retirement safety net, that could be a trap. Because what if working longer is not the reliable backup plan we think it is? And the brutal reality is that there's not just one single issue. It's work, it's aging, it's caregiving, rising costs, and retirement uncertainty, all colliding during the same 10-year window. So let's look at 5 realities that Gen X may be facing by 2036, and 5 ways to make ourselves harder to trap. Number 1, you may still need income, but full-time work may not work for you any longer. Let's say it's 2031 and you're 64 years old. You plan to stay at your job until age 67. But the department that once needed 12 people now runs on 7 and several different AI systems. The company calls it efficiency. You call it unemployment. And that's the danger in just saying, I'll work longer, because working longer only works if the job still exists, if the boss still wants you, if your skills still fit, and if your health cooperates with you. Now, AI won't erase every job, but it may allow companies to do a lot more with fewer people. And older workers may still find themselves needing income while struggling to replace the salary they once earned. And then there's burnout. A lot of Gen Xers are already tired of the grind right now. We don't want another promotion or another certification or another ladder to climb. We want less work controlling our lives. So what's the move for this? We need to build a smaller way to earn. And the answer is not necessarily a side hustle that becomes a second full-time job. The goal is to have one lower pressure way to bring in money if your main job ends earlier than you planned for it to. And maybe it's occasional work in a field you already know, something seasonal or remote or project-based, or something familiar, flexible, and far less demanding than your main job. It doesn't need to replace your full salary. Even a few $100s a month could stretch a bridge fund, reduce withdrawals, or help you cover insurance. The goal is not to keep grinding forever. It's to need the grind less. And this is how you keep the trap from closing on you. Number 2, Gen X is running out of recovery time. Let's say it's 2033. You're finally close to retirement. And then the market falls, let's say 25%. Your retirement accounts lose years of growth just as you're preparing to use it. Then add in a roof replacement or a job loss, an adult child who needs help, or a health expense. At 60 or 65, several bad years in a row, that can change everything. They can change when you retire, when you claim Social Security, where you live, how much you spend, and whether retirement remains a choice or something forced upon you. Fidelity recently reported that the average Gen X 401k balance is $215,000. Now, some of you hearing that, you're looking at your balance and thinking, I'm okay. And some of you hear it and you have this pit in your stomach. And either way, the math, it doesn't care about your feelings. It only cares about the recovery time you have left. And the brutal reality is not only that some of us are behind, it's that Gen X could reach retirement just as a recession or a market downturn arrives. And this time, we don't have decades to wait it out. So what's the move for this? We have to stop planning for one retirement. Maybe we should start thinking about 3 phases of retirement. The first is the bridge phase, and that's the early period between leaving full-time work and reaching either Medicare, Social Security, or larger retirement withdrawals. And a bridge fund can also protect you during a market downturn. And instead of selling investments after they've fallen, you may be able to live temporarily from cash, a part-time income, or some other safer money while giving the market time to recover during those early years. The next phase is your normal retirement, Social Security, your retirement accounts, and possibly still some earned income. And then the third phase would be late retirement, a block of money that's protected for your 80s and beyond. The years when you may need help at home or transportation or even long-term care. And by thinking of retirement this way in 3 different phases, it does 2 massive things. 1, it gives money very different jobs. And 2, it keeps you from looking at one retirement balance and expecting it to solve every problem at once. And all 3 of them are important. But your bridge fund, it matters because it gives you somewhere to stand. It gives you some footing if work ends before the rest of your retirement is ready. Because you can live off that bridge fund and still let that money in your investments recover or just continue to grow. Number 3 is your house may be paid off, but still be too expensive. Let's say it's 2034, the mortgage is finally gone, but insurance, property taxes, utilities, and repairs, now they cost almost as much as the mortgage did. And that may be one of the biggest surprises waiting for Gen X, because we've been told all along that paying off the house can make retirement more affordable. And it's definitely a great asset to have. But a paid off house is not a free house. It's a house without a mortgage. But you still have all of those recurring expenses that never end, that are inextricably tied to home ownership. And unlike the mortgage, none of those expenses come with a final payoff date. Homeowners insurance is already rising sharply in many parts of the country, if not everywhere. Some people are paying thousands more for it. Some are raising their deductibles. Some are struggling to find coverage at all. And even when inflation slows, prices don't usually return to what they were. And that's the disheartening part. Food prices don't go back. Insurance prices don't go back. Now, we've seen rents in some parts of the country. They have come down a little since the, post-COVID boom, but they're nowhere near what they were pre-2020. So what's the move for this one? Well, we have to lower the income that our life requires. And I know it seems like that with every passing year, we feel like we have to cut more and more of the enjoyable things out of our lives just to be able to afford the required things that aren't much fun at all. But that is where we are. And I think that it's going to continue in the decade ahead. It's all about reducing the amount of income that your life needs to still function. Because the more expensive that your life becomes, the fewer choices you have. If your lifestyle requires a large full-time salary, losing that salary becomes a crisis. But if you gradually reduce the permanent costs, you create room. You may be able to work less, take a lower stress job, retire earlier, or survive longer without earned income. We have to look the hardest at the costs associated with housing, cars, debt, insurance, and don't forget possessions that constantly require more money to own them. Every recurring bill holds a small amount of control over you. The next decade may reward the Gen Xer with the lowest required income rather than the one with the highest salary. And later we'll talk about why Social Security falling into the same window makes lowering those costs non-negotiable. Okay, we're looking at the next decade here. And number 4, caregiving may collide with our own aging. Let's say it's 2036. Your parent is 94. You're 69. You're coordinating their care while managing your own aches and pains, prescriptions, and retirement decisions. And some days you're already running low on energy, and you have no idea what tomorrow will require. And that's the future that many Gen Xers may be facing. Over the next 10 years, a lot of us will be helping parents who will then be in their 80s and 90s. Some of us may even still be helping adult children at that time. All while our own health starts demanding more attention. And this is where retirement advice often just becomes unrealistic. It assumes that every extra dollar can go toward our future, and that every off time or every evening can be used to earn more, that every weekend can be used to plan. And real life doesn't work that way. Caregiving costs money, it costs time, it affects work, it affects sleep, and it can consume the exact years when we were supposed to be making that final financial push. And healthcare becomes a part of that same collision. And before 65, there may be insurance costs. And after 65, there's Medicare, but it doesn't cover everything. So what's the move for this? We have to audit the life that we're carrying into retirement. Don't ask whether your life works today. Ask whether it will still work when your energy is lower, your income is smaller, and your responsibilities are heavier. We need to think about everything. Let's think about our current homes. Will you be able to continue to stay in that home as you age? Will you be able to afford to hire out for the things that that home requires? The things that you're doing yourself right now, can your life absorb caring for an older family member? And not just once, but again and again as their needs increase. How much responsibility are you carrying for other adults? You also need limits around what help you can sustainably provide. Because sacrificing your own health, your income, even your own retirement, well, that's not a good outcome for anyone. And the goal is not to try and predict every caregiving crisis here, because that would be impossible. But it's to build a life that asks less from you when and if a crisis does arrive. By 2036, the best home to spend your retirement in may not be the biggest or the most impressive. It may simply be the one that's the easiest to live in. And that's how you keep the trap from closing. Okay, number 5, Social Security will still exist, but the rules will change. Now, picture the early 2030s. You're finally ready to claim Social Security, but Congress has spent years arguing about how to fix the program. And Social Security is not expected to just disappear, but it does have a funding problem. And without changes, it will only be able to pay part of our scheduled benefits. Now, Congress will probably act at the 11th hour, probably, but none of us know exactly how. Will it be through higher taxes, changes to benefits, a higher retirement age for younger workers, some combination of all of the above? And that deadline falls directly into the Gen X retirement window. The oldest Gen Xers will already be collecting, and the youngest ones will be getting close. And most of us won't have a traditional pension. We were handed 401ks with its investment choices and market risks. We were told at a young age, here's an account, now make some grown-up decisions for the next 40 years, best of luck to you. And when it comes to Social Security, we've always assumed that politicians, they'll fix it because older Americans always vote. But lately, I'm less comfortable building my retirement around the belief that Washington will protect us exactly the way it's done in the past. So what is the move? We have to build a plan that can bend. The biggest mistake we can make is building a retirement plan that only works under one set of conditions. Work until X date, or claim Social Security at this age, withdraw X exact amount every month. Those kinds of rigid rules, they're not going to work for us. Having a strict plan and hoping that nothing changes before then, that's way too risky. So we have to build more than one workable path. And maybe plan A is retiring at 62 and using a bridge fund until 65. Maybe plan B is leaving full-time work but still earning a smaller income. And plan C is staying at your job 1 year longer if the job remains tolerable and your health remains strong. Maybe you delay Social Security under one scenario and claim earlier with another. Maybe you tell yourself that you are going to stay in your current home unless the total cost of staying in that home crosses a limit that you already set in advance. And we can't protect against every what if out there, but we do have to make sure that one event doesn't just wipe out everything. One layoff or one bad market year, one major repair, one health problem. A strong plan doesn't expect the world to behave. A strong plan has backup plans. Now, the world that Gen X will face in 2036 will look a lot different than the one we've been planning for. Some jobs will disappear, some costs will rise, our parents will be older, our bodies will be older, and the retirement systems we expected to rely on, they may work a lot differently. And the brutal truth is that we may not like that world. But what we can control is how expensive, rigid, and employer-dependent our lives are when it arrives. We can't free ourselves from the systems that are in place around us. But the less we depend on them, the better we'll be. And the next 10 years, they may be hard, but hard doesn't mean hopeless. We are the generation that is known for its adaptability. That's what Gen X has always done. So as I often like to say, stay Gen X strong, and I will see you in the next video.